Did you know that negative thoughts actually keep you from being successful? If you want to know how to change that, tune in and find out.
You are listening to the Prosper at Law podcast. Learn how to reduce stress, have more time, and make more money. Come on in.
I'm Greg McCollum, and I built a 7-figure criminal defense law firm. I formed Prosper at Law to show criminal defense law firm owners who are desperate for success how to grow from under $200,000 to $1 million and beyond. I want to ask you a question, and this has to do with thoughts, negative thoughts versus positive thoughts. And later, I'll talk a little bit about the power of positive thinking, and that's a fascinating thing. Also, we'll go into the white bear versus the blue dolphin, which is a psychological exercise where people have analyzed this, and those are just the numbers, the things that they call it, not the numbers, but the images or the things to think about. But are your first thoughts when you first wake up, what are you thinking? Are those thoughts negative or are they positive? Do you wake up and think, oh, it's a great day. I'm so happy to be alive. Everything in my life is going so well. I'm going to have a fantastic day and I can't wait to get started because I love what I do. Or when you first wake up, do you think, oh, I need to reschedule that meeting. I don't know how I'm going to manage the schedule. I had a problem with somebody at work. I don't think I handled it right. And then they just start cascading. And the interesting thing about it is that, and there's this science, and a lot of things in our modern society, or somebody will do a talk on it. Maybe somebody will do a TED talk on it, or somebody will publish an article and it will get popular, and then everybody will start repeating it and it will be accepted as true. And there are several things like that. And as a criminal defense law firm coach, as a lawyer coach, a lot of this stuff I've been taught. And so when I go back later and fact check it, it's not quite true. It's not false necessarily, but a lot of things that self-improvement coaches and people that are trying to improve people's lives through the psychology is so much more powerful when you can point to a study. So you got a study at a major university like Harvard or MIT or a respected scientist or something like that. And a lot of these studies they're not really scientific. In other words, when somebody goes back later and tries to put in a control model and replicate it, they can't prove it the way it was accepted. And then that has a backlash, which is also negative because usually there was something good in it. So in this situation, the so-called science, and if you look up articles and things like that, mostly what they'll say is that you have 60,000 thoughts in a day. Your brain has 60,000 thoughts, and that most of those thoughts are negative. In other words, 70% of those thoughts are negative. You also have the subconscious or unconscious mind, which, as I understand it, controls 90 to 95% of everything you do. And that makes sense because, you have all these systems in your body. You have your respiratory system. You got your heartbeat. You've got, your eyesight. And things that just your body just does on a pattern over and over and over, and you literally don't think about it, but your unconscious mind is thinking about it. And the issue there is that you get into this pattern where you're just programmed. You're programmed to wake up, brush your teeth, use the bathroom, take a shower, get your coffee, drive to the office, and so those are just repetitions. And then when you go back and look at your day. So you did that on Monday, you did that on Tuesday, you did it Wednesday, you did it on Thursday, you did it on Friday. So chances are, if you did the same thing every day, then your life is going to look the same the following week. It's going to look the same the following month, year, and even decade, because you're doing the same things. Because what changes your life is taking action, and taking the action, though, requires a different thought, a vision, an idea, and also taking the time to do it. So on these 60,000 thoughts a day, the things that I looked at said, because there was somebody else who just did some math and said that I think that's 1.4 thoughts per second, and that's on like a 24-hour day. And I think that then is that true? And then she went in and she did some research with some brain scans, and they produced an image of these things they called, I think, brain worms, okay? And you could see it where little things were linking together. And so she was saying that those links are a thought. So she says there's 6,000 thoughts a day. But 6,000 thoughts, if that's the number, and nobody really knows because it's so hard to quantify this, if it is 6,000 or it's 60,000 or it's some other number, it's still a lot of thoughts. And the consensus is that most thoughts are negative. And so you'll know if this applies to you when you start thinking about what you think about. And to change anything, you have to first become aware of it. And the more I studied this and the more I read about it, the more I realized that this, when I wake up, my first thought is a problem. My first thought is negative. It doesn't make me feel good. It makes me feel anxious. It makes me concerned. And then I start focusing on the problem. And so, for most of my life, I never even thought about this. And my mother preached, positive thinking to me. And I think it was it Norman Vincent Peale, I think, wrote the book, The Power of Positive Thinking. And so as I grew up and I read the book, and my mom said, think positive, think positive, think positive. But what she mirrored to me really wasn't positive. Not that she was bad or anything. She was just like everybody else I knew. She wasn't really positive. But it's noble that she wanted to think positive. And the whole positive thinking, and that gets into if you try to not think about something. So I remember one time that a friend gave me a ticket to a Tony Robbins event. And I was hesitant to do it because the event was virtual. And I thought, I'm going to go to this event. I think it was 3 to 5 days. I can't remember. It might have been 5 days. And it went on for several hours. It didn't go 8 hours, but it went for like 5 hours a day or something like that. I can't remember. And I'd always heard about Tony Robbins and that he taught the power of positive thinking. But I'd never really read anything that he had written. And I hadn't really, maybe I'd seen a part of an interview or something like that. But when he goes on stage and on this event, it was incredible. I think there were 1 million people online that had paid for this. And he said, if you read about me, he has that Tony Robbins voice and that presence. He said, if you read about me, what you'll hear is that, I preach or I teach positive thinking. And he said, I don't believe in positive thinking. So right then I was hooked. I was stunned. It's like, what do you mean you don't believe in positive thinking? And there's this thing called the white bear theory, which says that, and I think this was a quote from the novelist, the Russian writer, Dostoevsky. If it wasn't Dostoevsky, it was Tolstoy, but that's neither here nor there. And he said, if I don't want to think about that white bear, then it keeps creeping back into my mind. Every time I try not to think about that white bear, it shows up. And so it's the same thing like if you get a song stuck in your head, and then you start to understand that, our brain wires and fires. And so you get that song in your head and it plays over and over and over. And that's what happens in our lives, is the song playing. So what's the song? Is it a song that of success? Is it a song that things are going to work out for you? Is it a song that you're going to be happy and profitable? Is it a song that you're going to grow over and over? or is it playing something negative? And so one of the techniques that's taught is you can't not think about the white bear, okay? And the white bear just represents an issue or a problem. It's, a metaphor. So then the idea is then think about the blue dolphin. So what's the blue dolphin? The blue dolphin is simply taking something good and thinking about that and substituting the thought, because you can substitute one thought for another. Like, for example, if you have a song stuck in your head and then play a different song, literally, play a different song 3 times, and then that's a song you like better or whatever, and that's stuck in your head. But all things are stuck in our head, and it's one of the reasons that I really try to go on a mental diet and not watch the news. And the weather too. Here in Myrtle Beach, we just had an event, and everybody's arriving on Friday. People are flying in from all over the nation, from the West Coast, it's literally coast to coast nationwide, where people come in for this event. And then on Friday evening, somebody said to me, well, what about the hurricane? And I thought, what hurricane? It turns out that there was some hurricane or 2 hurricanes that were out in the Atlantic Ocean, and they're going to cause some rain. But our event was Friday through Sunday, and the storm wasn't even coming until Tuesday, if it were coming at all, which it isn't coming at all. So the news and the weather, especially if you live where I live on the coast, the weather is turned into like an entertainment scare tactic, because every time something terrible is going to happen, more people tune in. The same thing with the news. Everything that's bad, people focus on. So these things loop around in your head. So instead, I'm much more likely to listen to a podcast. There's several people, some of them life coaches, different things like that. But that's who I'm going to listen to, because that's the song I want in my head. I don't want my repeating thoughts to be that I can't do it. I want to be encouraged. If you look at your thoughts, and there's a famous quote from Henry Ford that I love. He says, whether you think you can or think you cannot, you're right. Whether you think you can or think you cannot, you're correct. And thoughts are powerful. And so the negative thoughts also, in my life and in my experience, and I think this is true for everybody, if I'm having a problem, for instance, like in the past in my law firm, let's say, because some of the most severe problems are, business related, so say cash flow, or maybe an employee leaves or something like that. Like at one time when I had this certain person working in my office, different people that worked for me, and I didn't have as many as I have now, but I had a few, and they said, if you don't do something about her in this management role, all of us are walking out the door today. All right. And so I've had other situations where, and I think I've talked about this before in the past, where, I couldn't make payroll, where I didn't have enough money in the bank and there wasn't money coming in. So those are traumatic events. And those things, as you think about it, they paralyze you. Think of it this way. If you picture a deer in the forest, and then the deer is just relaxing, grazing, doing what a deer does, the deer is peaceful, thinking about the next leaves to chomp on or whatever, and then out of the corner of the deer's eye, the deer sees a coyote or more than one coyote. The thought process is completely different, because now the deer is in fight, flight, or freeze. Fight, flight, or freeze. And that's a survival mechanism. And so the deer can't plan the deer's next vacation, right? Or next project in that mode, because the deer has to stay alive. And this is why people believe that most of our thoughts are negative because it's survival. So to survive, we have to watch out for danger. So what does danger look like? For us, danger looks like problems. If we have a problem, that's danger. And then that changes our body chemistry where we're in more of that fight or flight. And when these things have happened to me in the past, that's not the time for growth. Now, those things happen, and they're things that you have to focus on and work through. But if your life consists of that, and that I used to have this quote on my wall in my old law firm, because that's the way I thought. And the sign said, "One damn thing after another, next 10,000 miles." And I'd never put anything like that up again, because that's not a good message for me. But if your life consists of that, one damn thing after another for next 10,000 miles, one crisis problem after another, then the danger is that you get caught in this fight or flight, and you're frozen, and you can't do anything positive. And so the negative thoughts that we have, basically, I think science shows that those are survival responses. We didn't get this far as a species because we went out and created a business or did something great or gave to charity or something like that. That's a factor. But the reason we evolved in our life is because we learned to recognize danger, and our body chemistry changes when that happens. You get increased cortisol, your adrenaline, and all those things happen. The blood rushes to your extremities, and you're reacting. You're not thinking. You're not planning. So these thoughts, in some level, they have the same response. Now, I had this guy that used to work for me, and we'd known each other for years before he came to work for me. And he was a great lawyer, and he worked for me for I think it was 3 years, and then he went on to become a judge. And I don't see him as much as I like, but I love the guy. But anytime we got a case, and I would talk about the case, because the way we handle cases in my law firm, Complete Legal Defense Team, and what I did when I did the sales calls, and what my sales team is supposed to be doing, and sometimes I have to go back and retrain them and correct them, is ask the client now the client's in distress, the client's been arrested, the client's been charged with something. Most of our clients have never been arrested, so a lot of their life depends on how this case comes out. And so we ask them, what do you want? And then why do you want it? And basically what they want is this result, or their life is ruined or partially ruined in a way that they cannot recover. And so I remember I would say something about a case, and maybe I'd say, well, let's see if the prosecutor will agree to this, or let's try this. And he would emphatically kind of yell out, "That won't work." I don't know, over the 3 years, he must have said that hundreds of times. That won't work. See, then that thought now stops you, because that won't work. Why try it? And he would always tease me, but really kind of derisively say, you're all, what do you call me? Your thought, Greg, are all your Skittles and rainbows. You don't understand reality. And we had a case one time, and it wasn't a major case, because it was a charge of like animal cruelty, where this kind of older couple had these 2 dogs, and one of the dogs looked emaciated, and so the dogs were taken from them and put in the animal shelter, and they're not their dogs anymore. The government has seized their dogs, and they were concerned that one of the dogs, because the dog was very old, and there was no evidence that I ever saw that the dog was mistreated. It's probably the dog had just lived too long. And so nothing would do, but they wanted to get the dogs back. And of course, they're also arrested and charged with animal cruelty. And so without going through the whole case, I had a bet with my lawyer, and I said, because I said one of the dogs died, but they wanted to get the other dog back, and I said, we got to get that dog back. That won't work. I said, no, we're going to get the dog back for them. And he said, if you get that dog back, I'll take you out to dinner at this fancy steakhouse, and we have this fancy wine that he loved. Well, I got the dog back, okay, and then so he had to pay for this like $400 or $500 dinner. Interestingly, when we had cases like that again, he wouldn't bet me, okay, because that won't worked. So Skittles and rainbows and some, strategy and some work, it did work. There was another case where a guy came in and he was charged with receiving 60, 70 pounds of marijuana. And when I asked him what he wanted a misdemeanor, okay? That's a major felony, trafficking in marijuana. And this was years ago when marijuana crimes were seen as more serious than they are now. They're still serious, certainly in our jurisdiction. Certainly we've got 60 pounds of marijuana. And so I didn't know how I was going to do it. I didn't know how I was going to get him a misdemeanor, but that's what we focused on. And without going through the whole case strategy, and I could explain that, but I don't need to do that now. At the end of the case, we got him a 6-month misdemeanor, no jail time. So it did work. And why did it work? Because I believed that it could work. And if I believe something's going to work and then it doesn't work, then for my mind, what difference does it make that it didn't work? At least I went down swinging. At least I tried. But amazingly, more and more, if I look at in my life where I've done this as a lawyer, it's amazing the things that had worked because I thought it was a possibility. And the reason I bring this up is if you treat your life the same way, if you treat your law firm the same way, and all your thoughts are negative and you don't think anything will work and the world is against you, then it won't work. If you think you can't, you're right. And so it's very important. And so I would ask you, though, really, when you wake up and you have that first thought, just recognize it and think, what am I thinking about? And it may take, you may have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 negative thoughts in a row before you even realize it. And when that happens to you, find your blue dolphin. Think about something good that happened yesterday, or think about something good that's going to happen or might happen today. And if you can't think about anything like that, just think about somebody that you love and you're grateful for, and change that thought pattern so that your mind is more open to something that you can do. If you want to grow your law firm, if you want to do something and that scares you, then just think about something pleasant as you're trying to do it. So I hope this was helpful. Not control your thoughts, but change your thoughts. And I think you'll see a difference in your life. Until next time, thank you.
If you want to know more, go to prosperatelaw.com. We show criminal defense law firm owners how to reduce stress, have more free time, and make more money. Thanks for listening.